We now want to pick the thoughts of the local chapter of Transparency International, the Ghana Integrity Initiative, on these developments. The amount of money found in a public officer's house as revealed by the charge sheet, and now the OSP arresting and interrogating the former minister. Mary Ada is the executive director. She's joining us to share some thoughts on the matter. Madam, thanks for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Bernard, and good evening to your cherished viewers.
So, what were your initial reactions on Friday when you heard the matter, the amount of monies involved, a minister of sanitation, even before we get to the OSP angle? What are your initial thoughts on the issue? Some people say some people have stolen money, and now we are persecuting the victim instead of focusing on the people who have stolen money. Here we are talking about the victim of a theft. Is that how you also see it?
Not at all, not at all. Wrong is wrong. No matter how we look at it, we cannot counteract the wrong acts and let them go. So we know the right processes are in place to deal with the thievery or the stealing by the maid servants, even though some people have tended to make a joke of it from an economics angle where you understand best that they were trying to redistribute wealth, that the maid was doing a very good job at that because she understood the perspective of redistributing wealth. It went as far as even her ex-boyfriend, meaning that she wanted everybody to benefit from it. But that is extreme, and we believe that for us, one of the things we have said is the fact that nobody should be allowed to steal, be you a public officer, a private sector actor, or an individual, as that is. The law is the law, and the law does not permit us to do so. And that is why the law criminalizes stealing. And that is how come they are in court today to ensure that that issue is dealt with. However, for GII, we are scandalized. We are so disappointed, and that is to say the least. We are so ashamed that as a people who continue to rhetorically say we are fighting corruption, and we are putting in place measures to ensure that the fight against corruption thrives, we continue to hear some of these. I say some of these because this is not the first instance where we are hearing of a politician keeping money. In the past, we have heard politicians keeping money in their boots and carrying it around. We have heard some even get missing before. And I believe Dr. Beda actually wrote a book on it. And so for us, it is something that we all need to say this is wrong, no matter where you are coming from. This is a public officer and not a private individual. The public officer is held by a large standard of the Constitution, Article 286, that their conduct should be beyond reproach. And for that matter, we believe that Madam Cecilia Dapaah should have remembered that she was a public officer and should have acted better. I say so also grounded in the fact that this is a government which at a point needed dollars for all of us. The BDCs wanted dollars to import fuel, they were not getting. The banking sector was in serious crisis for dollars, they were not getting. And so for us to hear that somebody had dollars in their home, stashed safely and securely, in fact, not securely, because the maid was able to ensure that it wasn't secure. And for the maid to continually pilfer unnoticed means the storage or the stock of dollars in that house was huge. For me, if you pick 10 cedis of mine, I would remember, because I don't have that much money to say that if you pick, I would not know. And so this means there was so much of it that she didn't recollect that it was there, or it was stolen at all, until an occurrence of nature then determined that her husband came to make this happen.
So, Mary, I agree, I understand what you're saying, but so far, nobody has been able to pinpoint to any law that Madame Cecilia Dapaah and her husband have broken, because they've looked at the Constitution. There's no explicit law against keeping money at home. People have mentioned the criminal code. There's no explicit law. So are you speaking from a point of morality and code of conduct, or from legality?
So, Bernard, that is why this issue is even more critical that we discuss. We discuss because if you look at the criminal code, it talks about stealing, it talks about other things. But then if you are going to hold them by the stock of law, then it is going to be a difficult venture to pursue, because we have clauses that speak to other things, but not all of them. Bribery, if we are able to establish that the money was given to her by some perhaps business dealing that happened, then that is fine. But until then, we cannot say she was bribed. That is why maybe she didn't have the moral courage to take the money to the bank, because she would be asked questions. Again, we know that one of the critical elements of our legislation, which the UNCAC review has spoken to in the past, is the fact that our legislation, or our frameworks around unexplained wealth, is very limited. And so they have called on us to ensure that we pass that framework in the past. However, the YOCO Act has some elements of this in, so they can also pursue. But then we have, if we say we do not have at all, that would not be too correct. We have the asset declaration regime, which I believe Madame Cecilia Dapaah would have filled. And Act 550 speaks to the fact that you tell us your assets and liabilities upon, even before assumption of office, and also when you leave office. So we are consoled in the fact that if Madame has declared her assets, then we would be able to SHRAG, which is the entity assigned or allowed to do this, would be able to pick this and then assess it against the wealth she has. Again, the Internal Revenue Act as well also speaks about the issues around taxation and the rest. So we would also be able to then establish whether these huge amounts, she has filed her tax returns, and these tax returns affect these huge amounts that have been cited in her home, or that she has reported being stolen. That is a ground based on which we can start this. And the OSP Act, remember, has some portions which speak to seizure, freezing of assets, and also doing a thorough, their ally speaks to the fact that they can do a thorough investigation around unexplained wealth. So when we say that we do not have, it is not true. The OSP LI, which is LI 2374, when you look at the 20, it talks about this critically. And so they can go ahead and investigate. And I've seen the form. It is very exhaustive. It captures PEPs, I mean politically exposed persons, and it even talks about girlfriends and all associates. So it is a basis on which we can begin to do this investigation. And then when we add it to the asset declaration law, then we would be making some significant strides in this case. So if we say necessarily we don't have, that is not correct, because the OSP legal, the LI, the legal instrument talks about it, and I mean LI 2374. When you look at the section 20 of it, or they call it regulation 20, which talks about declaration of income, then it means she would be able to then tell us where all her income and liabilities and where she got this money from. And I believe that is the strong point based on which the Office of the Special Prosecutor has initiated the processes they have.
Fair enough, but do you not think the uproar is a bit premature in the sense that if she is able to satisfactorily answer the OSP about where she got the money from, so if the wealth is explained, then we are not moving to the second stage, because I see two stages here. How did you get the money? And then did the money come from legal or illegal means? So you need to deal with unexplained wealth before you go to whether the wealth is from illicit enrichment. So is our angst as a public not a bit premature? Because if she's able to tell the OSP that, look, maybe I had farmlands I inherited from my father that I sold, and this is the proceeds of the money, and I didn't have time to go to the bank, as an example, that could leave the story. Of course, that depends on what she filed in her asset declaration. But my point is that, are we not jumping the gun with our anger, or is it just a question of the way corruption works and perception, for which reason people are angry that a minister should have that amount of money in her house?
Bernard, number one, we all know that the minister has a salary, which we all know about. It's public information. And so if the minister has inherited things, as you correctly said, it would be declared in her assets declaration form. So we can look at that. But then essentially what we are talking about here is the allegation of corruption and corruption-related offenses. We are going to be looking at, and I believe the OSP is going to be interrogating beyond just the fact that it could have been inheritance. When the OSP activates its mandate, it is extensive. And I believe that we would be able to then determine whether these amounts are legally acquired or not legally acquired. It is for the benefit of the fight against corruption that when we are able to then determine this, if she is not guilty, why not? She can be freed, and then we all know that, oh, exactly, this is it. And it also then begins to initiate that process for me, which I believe is critical in this discussion, that we need to, as a matter of agency, deal with the issue of people being able to carry cash without any impediment. I mean impediment when it comes to regulation. If you have traveled outside this country, you would realize that there are limits. They ask you to declare if you are carrying any foreign exchange and the limits within which you have to operate. If you are carrying within a certain range, you are requested to declare it, and you are taken through a whole process. So I believe that this particular matter now generate that advocacy, which we should sustain, and which we should begin to then look at the Banking Act, which if you have read, you know that even the banks which administer money to us on a daily basis are not allowed to keep up to 1 million in their vault on a daily basis. And the Bank of Ghana superintends that and ensures they do not. So for us as a people, I think this is where the discussion is going to lead us. If we do not do anything at all, one of the things that should come out of this is to ensure that we do not allow this to continue to occur, because we have said that we want to formalize our economy. We want to digitalize. We want to ensure that money is not in the hands of people.
Right.
And if we say this, and those who are keeping these rules, those who are supposed to keep these rules for us to also comply, are flouting it, then it means we are not going anywhere.
Right. Executive Director GII, thank you as ever for talking to us, and keep up the fight. It's a good fight. She's the Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, who are the local chapter of Transparency International. When I come back, Martin Kpebu, who's a lawyer, will join me as well. I want to look into the law a bit, because for the fact that we don't even have a law explicitly criminalizing what has happened, a lot of people are complaining about this. We'll find out whether it's a problem with our legal regime or how we're interpreting it. and how optimistic is he that OSP will find something. So, Martin, thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Bernard.
Hope you are well.
Yes, I am. These are exciting days, you know. Yes.
Well, let me start off from where I left with Mary. Does the fact that a conduct which a lot of people consider to be reprehensible does not find an explicit law saying it is criminal, is that a problem? Because most people are saying, why should the minister have that amount of money in her house? So from a moral perspective or from code of conduct perspective, it's wrong. But we can't seem to pinpoint any law in the Constitution or in the criminal code or even explicitly in the anti-money laundering law or the BOG Act that explicitly prescribes what she does. Is that a problem?
Well, Bernard, on the face of it, yes, it does. But I think we should hasten slowly so that we can research this area more. That's a matter of having so much cash in the house. I think we should, for now, be content that at least the law provides that if she cannot explain the source of this wealth, she's going to lose it. So let's be content with what we have now. Then we can research and do more comparative studies all over the world to be sure that we want a new law to say that don't even have such cash at all in your house. You know, this is not the best time to make a law when our excitement is very high. We may end up doing something that will create problems for us. Bernard, as we speak now, Article 286 Clause 4 says that if she cannot explain the source of this money, she's going to lose it. That's unexplained wealth. She's going to lose that money. So let's take it one day at a time. If she can't explain the source of this money, Article 286 Clause 4 says that she will lose it. So it says that if the money cannot be attributed to income, loan, gift, or inheritance, then it's not hers, and so she will lose it. That's unexplained wealth. And so I think that, yes, it's not all that, it's not a perfect world. It's not a perfect situation, but at least the state getting the rest of the money, it's also not bad either. And then you mentioned that by what specific crime is being caused. What is going to happen is that when the OSP investigates this matter, we will see whether we can get issues of bribery, okay, and most especially, and corruption coming up, because that is where our citizens, our suspicions are greatly geared towards. We are looking in the area of bribery and corruption. So who knows? We may be lucky, there will be evidence of bribery and corruption. If there's no evidence, and yet she still cannot explain the source of that money, she loses the money.
So you are saying that whichever way we look at it, once the wealth cannot be explained, she loses it to the state. Then the second layer would be, where did she get it from? So if then there's criminality involved, so that's stage 2. So let's celebrate stage 1. Yes. Let OSP do stage 1, and then we can move to stage 2. That's your argument.
Yes. That's the main thing, because they say half a loaf is better than none. Yes, half a loaf of bread is better than none. So let's take it one day at a time. In actual fact, the first thing we should be celebrating is the fact that God is giving us such a case. You see how President Kufuor has been denying that there's no corruption, and God has handed us this sweet case. I mean, so it's good. We should be celebrating it.
So Martin, you say you wear different hats. You wear the lawyer hat and the anti-corruption hat. So in this interview, which of the hats are you wearing?
Yes. So at a point in time, I'm wearing the lawyer's hat. Then at another point, the anti-corruption crusader. So you see the question you asked about the money. I'm excited because look, from the anti-corruption crusader side, we're excited that we've had a case where we've seen big money that so far it's looking like there can't be any plausible explanation. And so it brings excitement until she can display the excitement. It's just like when England were in the semi-finals in the World Cup, the last one, the one they got to the semi-final. They started celebrating with aircraft going over the air and saying it's coming home, it's coming home. But they lost the semi-final match, didn't they? So let's start celebrating.
Just a final point. Occupy Ghana is saying that we should pass the amended Conduct of Public Officers Act to strengthen our asset declaration regime. So they seem to think that that's one way we can really properly scrutinize public officers. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Bernard. Absolutely. It has to be passed. Look, that bill is not the best, but it marks a marked improvement over the current asset declaration law. And you know that law is something that President Akufo-Addo, the mother serpent of corruption, has been running away from. You see the Occupy Ghana letter. They've written so many letters. President Akufo-Addo said no, they are not interested in the law. Fortunately for us, the IMF added it to the deal. So when you read the IMF document, that is one of the conditionalities that government must meet. So government must now pass that law. If they don't, obviously, latter tranches of the money would not come. So they have been forced to the party. I mean, Bernard, it's such a shame.
Yeah, but Martin, I don't think it's fair to refer to the president in the terms that you did, honestly, on a program like this. He's not under the cost for discussion. So if somebody has used that description on a different platform to now make that reference, I think it's a bit unfair to him.
Bernard, Ms. Avle, I beg you, allow us sometimes. You guys are restricting us. Like I told you, I'm not only a lawyer, I'm also a citizen. Let's celebrate. When Mr. Amidu called the mother serpent of corruption, could he dispel it? He couldn't. It's a term. He called President Mills Professor Doolittle. Did Mills tell him anything? President Akufo-Addo called Professor Mills, Professor Doolittle, etc. He had names for everybody. It's his turn.
Okay.
What goes around comes
Fair enough.
around.
My final question for you.
Description.
Fair enough. My final question for you, Martin. In the president's response to the minister, he seemed to suggest that the process will clear her. What kind of pressure does that put on the OSP? Because he was appointed by the president, and the president seems confident that at the end of the day, you will be clean. Is that not prejudicial? And also, your knowledge of the OSP and the way they work, how confident are you that they will do a thorough job to make sure the truth is established?
Yeah, look, you have something to say in your question. That letter is being worded in such a manner as to bring undue pressure on Cecilia Dapaah, the special prosecutor. Yes, the wording of the acceptance letter puts a lot of pressure on any state institution interested and minded to investigate this matter. Nobody should have, it shouldn't have been written in such a manner. I mean, the brinkmanship is too much. President Akufo-Addo is acting as if the presidency is his personal property. Who writes such a letter? Where? Is there any precedent in any proper democracy? No wonder people are saying this one is not a democracy. This is a kakistocracy. Kakistocracy is government by the worst people in society. So these are democracies. It's not democracy. It's actually a kakistocracy when the worst people have the opportunity to govern. This is where you get this type of brinkmanship. Who does this? Who does this? This type of letter? Who? Which reasonable president wants to fight corruption writes such a letter? I mean, I looked at it and I was shocked. I was like, wow. So there is no boundary to the effrontery of President Akufo-Addo, no boundary to his shameless lack of courage and determination to fight corruption after promising so much. So this letter is certainly couched in a manner to put pressure on state institutions. But we are hoping that with public opinion behind Cecilia Dapaah, hopefully he will be able to ride this storm And so we'll be able to investigate this matter, because so far, if Madam Dapaah had answers, credible answers to this $1 million, etc., those answers would long have been out so that untruths or falsehood doesn't spread that far.
All right. Thank you, Martin. Always good to talk to you. And as we say, aluta continua. Thank you so much. Martin Kpebu is a lawyer. I call him a public interest lawyer. And he's been doing a lot of advocacy on these matters.